Good morning and welcome to Kramer's Corner with the daily technical update. It is Thursday, the 26th of September. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late this morning. I had some technical issue with the recording program. But let's start with in China. Here we have the Chinese FTSE China A50 index future. And it's been on the rise for the past three trading sessions. Really strong move, 4% again today. Breaking above the upper falling trend line here. Very close to 13,000, but in the bigger picture, we are still in a downtrend, as we can see. So maybe some stimulus package announced in China has lifted the market here. Looking at Hang Seng, that also been lifted, it actually been on the rise for the past week or so, very close to 20,000 here on the weekly. We'll see 20,286, some strong resistance there. We also have the 200 weekly moving average coming down, kind of putting a little bit lid on it. It could break higher if it takes out the 20,286, 87 level, but a little bit short-term stressed. And the US market last night didn't really enjoy this or got some benefit from this, but we get it in the pre-market. We'll have a look at that in a second. S&P 500 a little bit lower last night, but as we can see here on the US 500 CFD / the future, well, then it is pushing higher this morning. Pre-market, and I think we could see a 5,800, possibly 5,821, which is the 161.8 projection of this correction right there. Nasdaq yesterday, Nasdaq 100 closed just below the 20,041 resistance. This gap area we've talked about for quite some time. It has taken out this little peak there, and what we can see from the US NAS 100 CFD, it actually pushing higher above 20,000 now, and there's room up to around 20,500 here in the coming days. RSI on the daily is above 60 threshold, been for a couple of days now, and it is indicating higher levels. A key question: will it take out the previous all-time highs? There is potential to it. The European indices here with the EUROSTOXX 50 pushing higher, taking out 4,987, and also now 5,000. And we can remove this one. It has now been cancelled out, and there is now potential higher. RSI back above 60 threshold if it can hold on above that threshold, and if it can hold above 4,987 today, well, then there's potential towards previous all-time highs. Whether we'll get there is debatable, but there is at least the potential for it. At EUROSTOXX 50 CFD, we can see how it's pushing higher, and there's now potential up to around these peaks here around 5,050 and also higher. The DAX index also pushing higher, opening higher this morning. 19,290 is in sight, which is the 138.2 projection of this correction here. And what we can see currently, that the RSI is breaking above its upper falling trend line. And if it does close above that, then expect higher levels on DAX in the coming days and coming weeks. Also the Germany 40 CFD, we can see pushing higher. It's already well above its upper falling trend line, but key question, can it close above, which I believe it will. 19,300 is in sight, and there's also potential to higher level if it closes above. Then next key question will be, can it actually close above the 60 threshold, the horizontal line here, the 68.95, and then it will take out the divergence, that is, or the imbalance in the market. But for now, it seems like that's the way we are moving. The Amsterdam index jumped higher this morning and trading around 1915, finally breaking this 909 level here. It tried the other day but closed well below, back below. If it can close back above, well, then we are looking for a move towards the 927, and especially it will be supported if RSI can close above 60 threshold. The ASML is one of the stocks that is helping lifting the AEX Amsterdam index. It is now trading in this gap area here. If it can close above 783, then it has closed it, and there's potential up to around 845, 850. But there is some strong overhead resistance. We have the 200 moving average here. We have the 100 here, and the also the 55 pushing down right there. So there's overhead resistance. That could be a bit of struggle. But if RSI 60 can if it can close above RSI 60, then let's see if it can push up to 845. 77.25 is key resistance for CAC if it can close above that, and there is potential to test it really if RSI closes above 60 threshold. Well, and if it can close above, well, then there's potential up to 7,900. The Swiss markets pushing higher, open above the resistance here at 12,250 after closing above this resistance at 12,120, but now it's back below. If it closes the gap with a bearish move, well, then it can resume downtrend. But for now, it had done a bullish breakout. But RSI 60 will be key for further upside potential. It needs to close above. Euro-dollar spiked just above 112 yesterday, but got sent back down. So it's really a key resistance area that it really can't handle at the moment. We could now see a correction down to 110.83, which is the 61.8 correction of retracement of this uptrend here. If it breaks below that 110.80, well, then it could drop all the way down to 110, which will be key support. If it does close below 110, well, then the medium-term picture has been changed quite a bit, and we could see it pushing down and being caught in this range around 109, 110, and the uptrend here has been at least put on pause, maybe even demolished. Moving on to Euro Sterling. Euro Sterling retraced almost spot on a 38.2 retracement at 83.73. Now it seems to resume downtrend. We are in a downtrend on a medium term, as we can see, and there is potential lower to 82.30 on the medium term. Cable also a little bit in a correction phase after spiking above 134, but we are in a bullish trend. However, there's divergence here on the daily chart, indicating we could see a little bit of correction, maybe down to the 38.2, maybe even down to 61.8 retracement at 131.84. But if it takes out the peak from yesterday, expect cable to push higher towards 136.75. You can see we are in a bullish trend. There's no divergence on the RSI on the weekly, so medium term we are still on our way to 136.75 resistance. For now, it seems just a correction short term. The bounce in dollar yen seems to get some energy after being sent back down several times, trying to lift it above 61.8 retracement. Seems to get a little bit more traction. Could test the 786 retracement at 145.57. RSI breaking above its upper rising trend line here, but it is still well below the 60 threshold. So we're still in a negative sentiment, but the RSI divergence indicating downtrend exhaustion. However, if it takes out, and I will actually add the horizontal line there, if it takes out 142.89, well, then expect downtrend to resume. But for now, the corrective mood is still on and could reach a 786 retracement, but also even up to the 147.20 key resistance. Euro-yen is bouncing a little bit stronger, has already reached the 786 retracement at 161.25. Stalling a little bit, we can see the RSI still below 60 threshold. If it's being rejected, and if we start sliding back lower here on Euro-yen, then the downtrend could resume. There's overhead resistance with the 55 moving average coming down, and we have the 100 putting a lid on it here. So strong overhead resistance at 162.90 and 164. But if RSI does close above 60 threshold in a bullish move up here, then there could be potential to at least test it, the resistance, and maybe also break it. We have the upper part of the cloud here, currently just at 165. So really strong up overhead resistance, but could be broken. But keep an eye on the rejection and the resuming of a downtrend. Also, yen is having its RSI above 60 already, so expect a test of the 99.90 key strong resistance, where we have the 200 moving average also adding to the resistance. We have the cloud upper part. If it does close above, well, then there's potential up to higher levels around 102, maybe a little bit higher, but 102 should be in the cards. And if we also add Fibonacci to the correction here, then we can see where we can move to. And you can see there's also the 138.2 projection at 102 and a quarter. So in this region here, we could see a move to if it closes above 99.90. And the RSI keeps moving on, but it is actually indicating we are moving that direction. Sterling yen already testing its resistance at 193.50. RSI in a positive sentiment. If it closes above and also moves above the cloud, which I think it could do, then there's potential up to around 197.5. If it's being rejected, sliding lower, keep an eye on that. That could resume downtrend despite RSI being in a positive sentiment. Aussie dollar in a corrective phase, but not as big as expected for now, at least. I did expect it to retrace down to around the 61.8, 38.2, sorry, at the 68. It can still do that. But if it takes out a 69, which it did test yesterday, well, you can see here on the weekly why it's so strong one. We have the 200 moving average coming down. But if it takes it out once again, takes out the peak from yesterday, expect a move up to around 70, but no strong resistance until around 71, 30, 40 level. However, as we can see, the 200 moving average is giving historically some resistance, but it can spike above it. On the dollar Canada, correction phase at the moment, there's still room up to 135, but we are in a downtrend and could push lower in the coming weeks. But do not get surprised if it spikes up to 135 before resuming a downtrend again. Euro Swiss caught range bound between 95 and 94, breakout needed for direction. Currently RSI in a negative sentiment, needs to close above 60 threshold. If it does that, then we'll also see Euro Swiss closing above 95, and then there's potential up to 96. If it closes below 94, RSI being rejected here and pushing below the lower rising trend line and below the fourth threshold, expecting 93 to be tested and possibly lower. Dollar Swiss also range bound between 85.40 and 84, needs to break out of that range. And finally, the dollar index, well, in exhaustive mood, strong bounce yesterday, but it needs to close above its upper falling trend line to just indicate to us, well, we will see a larger bounce, and then it will be confirmed if it takes out 101.18 and with potential up to around 101.86. But for now, still in a bearish. Moving on to metals and gold, that is pushing higher, and I think it will push higher towards 2,700 here in coming days. We did not get a correction as it seems now. RSI in a positive sentiment, no divergence whatsoever. We are likely to push higher in the coming weeks. We can also see it here. Now it's also about to cancel its weekly divergence on the RSI, very close to, at least you can see very close to, if it moves above 80 and 80.05, well, then there's potential higher than 2,700, but keeps your stops closed. A correction could occur anytime, but for now there is a strong indication of a push towards 2,700. Silver seems to now, it has made its mind up and want to push higher towards the 32.50, and there is room up medium term, as we have seen before here on the weekly chart. There's room up to 34.40, 35. 40, if you can see where it comes from, it all the way back. Oh, let me just resize it all the way back to really way back here, and we are really going historically here now back to 2012, 2013. On copper, and let's just go back to the daily chart, but we can see here on the weekly what's actually going on. Copper, and this is actually quite interesting. On the weekly, there's never been negative sentiment, only positive sentiment. No divergence on the RSI. And if RSI on the weekly gets back above 60 threshold, which I believe it will, well, then there's potential much higher for copper on the medium to longer term. But if we're looking at short term, what's going on, short-term picture here, resistance at 468, 471, which is the latter is the 61.8 retracement of this downtrend here, and after breaking that falling trend line, well, now there's potential up to this area here around 468, 471, where there's some strong resistance. Moving on to crude oil WTI, we have that sold off here in early session today below the 69.50 support level. We talked about yesterday that was the key. If it took that one out, then downtrend was to resume. We have the here on the weekly, you can see what was really been going on. The triangle-like pattern breakout, sell-off, then a pullback up to test the lower rising trend line, and then now a sell-off again. And I think we'll see on the medium term WTI pushing lower towards 64, 62 level. More or less a similar picture on Brent. Took out 73.10, tested the in this correction phase where it tested the lower rising trend line and is now selling off again. I think we'll see it pushing down towards the 65, 64 support area down here. US 10-year Treasury yields, well, it has had some struggling with the breaking at this 380 level here after breaking above its upper falling trend line in this wedge-like pattern. Testing the upper falling trend line from the other side, that was very quick actually, but now it seems maybe it can get its mojo together and push higher towards 385 if you are in for a higher yields. It is a little bit of a struggle. You can see the RSI testing the upper rising trend line here. It needs to break above 60 threshold for a really push towards a 392 key strong resistance. But if it does that, well, then I think 392 will be taken out. Otherwise, likely to be rejected. We have the 55 moving average coming down here, also adding to the resistance there. If it slides back below here, and I would say back below the falling trend line here, then expect a test of 360 once again. All right, that's all for today. Have a nice day. Talk to you again tomorrow.